Fellow Rotarians, Rotary has blessed my life in so many ways. Becoming a Rotarian has provided an opportunity for giving back. It has given me a family when I needed it most, and it has also given me truly special and wonderful friendships that I know will last a lifetime all over the world. And that is why I am so pleased today to introduce our guest speaker, Mike McGovern. I first met Mike when the Rotary Leadership Atlantic Division was formed in 2004 here in Districts 7810 and 7820. As a visiting facilitator from home division, he gave of his time, his personal time, to come to our institutes over a number of years to help out as we grew and learned. Over those years, he shared his knowledge, his love of Rotary, and friendship, and I have counted him amongst my friends ever since. Always there to offer support, advice, guidance, and friendship. In my eyes, he is a Rotarian in the truest sense of the word. Mike has been the town manager of Cape Elizabeth since 1985. He currently serves as treasurer of the Museum of Portland Headlight and the Thomas Jordan Trust. He is also a past board chair of ACO Maine. A Rotarian with the Rotary Club of South Portland, Cape Elizabeth. Since 1986, Mike has served Rotary International as Vice President, Director, RI Board Executive Committee member, Permanent Fund National Advisor, Rotary Membership Zone Coordinator, RI Training Leader, and District Governor. A past Council on Legislation representative, he is also a past chair of Rotarians for Fighting AIDS, a Rotarian. Mike currently serves as the 2014-15 Vice Chair of the Rotary Foundation. He is a major donor and a Bequest Society member of the Rotary Foundation and a recipient of its citation for meritorious service. Rotarians, please welcome Vice President of the Rotary Foundation and Polio Plus Chair, Mike McGovern.
Out, yeah. Good afternoon, good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be back here in Halifax and to be with Stella. What enthusiasm! You know, unbelievable. The energy and the excitement that comes from your governor. It's just amazing, and obviously to be here with Ron and Jetta and so many friends. I had the honor of being a president's rep like Ron and Jetta to this district back when Mark Brown was governor, and great to see Mark and Doreen, and anyway, so many friends. You know, I arrived yesterday, and you know, so many things in Rotary. We hear expressions and we have greeting, and some of the things in Rotary I have trouble hearing at times. And sometimes you hear them right, sometimes you hear them wrong. And I arrived, and Kevin picked me up at the airport, and I arrived, and my hotel room wasn't quite ready. And I wasn't at the desk for a minute, and Stella comes along, and she said, your room's not ready. Oh, you can go to the lounge, you can do whatever. And I said, no, what's going on? And she said, oh, we got a couple of sessions going on. And she said, oh, one's on the foundation. I said, oh, that sounds good. I'd be happy to sit in the back. And then she said, there's another one on pets and sex. And, was I really hearing that right? So anyway, I decided to go to the one on the Rotary Foundation because, I wasn't sure what was going on up here in Nova Scotia. But I'm sure it was a very good session for those that went to the one on pets and sex. So anyway, I went to the one, the Rotary Foundation one, and I'm looking for a note here. And it was very good. There was a gentleman there named Matt, and Matt is someone who the district is perhaps in clubs, perhaps sponsoring to go on a global grant to study at King's College in London. And he said he was looking at studying intelligence. And he had done a study on back before World War II about the Germans and the English, and they really didn't understand the intelligence. And he was talking about, this Edward Snowden guy that we had down in my country. And it was very interesting. And he wants to study, the use of intelligence and how good or bad it is. And anyway, it reminded me of an email that I received from Aziz Memon. And Aziz Memon is our polio chair in Pakistan, a distinguished Rotarian doing so much work there. And anyway, the governor-elect, Jim's counterpart in Pakistan, has invited me to go to Pakistan at the end of June to install their district and club offices for the year. And really, it's because that's where polio is. A wonderful opportunity. And I had been planning to go there for some time. So anyway, Aziz sends me back an email saying, we'll think about it. And I responded to Aziz, well, I've already responded to the governor-elect, I'm coming. So, and the whole point was, while you go there, you don't want to just go to one event. It's a long way to go. You want to go to other visits. And Aziz was arranging, and had been arranging, appointments with other individuals. And two of the individuals he wants me to meet with is the President and the Prime Minister of Pakistan. So Aziz writes back, that I want to go and do more than one thing at the same time. Agreed, sir. He's very formal. We will try to arrange your call on Prime Minister/President and other important officials during your visit so that you can kill two birds with one stone. So I wrote back to Aziz, not planning to do that. But I do hope to have visits with those you deem appropriate. Warm regards, Mike. He responds, sure, Aziz. I don't know if he got it, the sensitivity, but I can just see getting off that plane and wherever I get off the plane, Karachi or whatever it is, and the intelligence would have picked up this email if they'll even let me into the country. So pets and sex, killing two birds with one stone. So there's all these things in Rotary, that we have expressions and that we think we understand where something is. And as Catherine mentioned, the prime reason I'm here is because Stella really cares about eradicating polio. And when John Germ became the new president nominee of Rotary, I took his place as polio chair. And one thing I've learned is that within polio itself, there are so many different things that we hear that have some semblance of truth. And sometimes I wonder, do we all really understand what it is that we're achieving with the eradication of polio? And is she drawing funny things over there? But one of the aspects of that is that when you look at the eradication of polio, we all hear, for instance, that Rotary, primarily is funding vaccines. And I think it's wonderful that we equate our funding of polio to the number of vaccine drops. But the good news is there's other people that want to fund the actual vaccine drops that won't fund other things. So as a result of your contributions, we are funding the operational support. We're funding those coolers that mentioned, that immunized 174 million. We're doing just about everything but the vaccines. But without us, the polio effort would be totally lost. The other point that I wanted to make is that there's an expression that we hear that the eradication of polio is the corporate international project of Rotary International. If there's anything I have found since October 1, since becoming polio chair, is while that may be technically correct, as Ron hinted this morning, it is so off from the real truth. The eradication of polio is the project of almost 35,000 Rotary clubs. It is a project of Rotary International, But you know, Rotary International doesn't eradicate polio in Evanston, Illinois, United States. It's things like these bicycle rides. It's things like, Cindy Titus is here. Where's Cindy? Where is she? There she is. You know, Cindy works for volunteers for something called the World's Greatest Meal. And every club does it differently. You know, and the great thing about it is every club can do it differently. But you know, my own club decided that a couple of the members would invite some other members to dinner at their home. And instead of a club meeting one night, we went to 6 different homes, and we had these wonderful meals. I'll never forget. I went to a German. He was originally from Germany, and we had the most delicious German layer cake. And you know, we all gave so much money for polio. You know, my club is not unlike your club. It's, you know, every single club, all 35,000, every single Rotarian, the 1.2 million, is going to be running the victory lap when we eradicate polio. Because if you have a can on your table where you put in your loonies to eradicate polio, a single loonie, and you do it, you are actually contributing to the eradication of polio in doing it. And you know what? With 35,000 clubs, it may seem like an impossible task to raise the money, but it isn't. Because for 30 years, Rotarians have had a passion to do this. They haven't given up. They've been persistent. And you look back, it was 60 years ago that the announcement was made by Dr. Jonas Salk that there was a vaccine to eliminate polio that was safe, effective, and potent. Those were the terms that were used. And people say, my goodness, what has taken so long? 60 years ago, and how do these Rotarians keep up the effort to do it? Well, when Jonas Salk made that announcement in 1955, there were over 600,000 cases of polio worldwide. Rotary, you, picked up the challenge 30 years later. At that point, there were still 350,000 cases a year. So you look at it, during the first 30 years, they eliminated 250,000 cases a year on average. And where did they do that? They did it in Canada. They did it in the United States. They did it in Australia. They did it in the United Kingdom. They did it in, if you pardon me, the easy places. And yet, it's taken 30 years to actually eliminate, on the average, of more cases per year than it was and it's being done in countries now like India, where, you know, my goodness, you know, what Stella described early today, that was in India, 170 million children immunized in a single day. That's not easy. The places we're trying to still eradicate polio are places where you have Boko Haram, places where you have Al-Shabaab, places you have Al-Qaeda, however you want to pronounce it. You know, it isn't easy. But yet in each of those countries, again, the clubs in those communities have the courage and the persistence to continue to work to eradicate polio. You look at Pakistan, for instance. Pakistan, there's been 80 individuals, no Rotarians, but 80 individuals, health workers and security protecting them, that have been shot and killed giving out polio drops. 80 people. In Somalia, another problem spot right now, just a week ago, there was a van with a United Nations seal, the United Nations logo, on the outside of the van, and it was bombed, and 2 polio workers working for UNICEF passed away. So, you know, so when we're asked here in Halifax, Newfoundland, Labrador, Prince Edward Island, when we're asked to come up with a little bit of money to get this done after 30 years, after 60 years, whatever way you want to look at it, our sacrifice, it's important what we do, but I think it pales into comparison to what we're asking the Rotarians to do in those places where polio is still endemic. It was alluded to this morning, it's still 3 countries: Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Nigeria, where polio is still endemic. A lot of folks want to celebrate polio being free in Africa. I understand that. Everyone's very excited. Just a couple of days ago, it was 9 months since the last case in Nigeria. Somalia actually had the most recent case in Africa. That was in August of last year. But the environmental samples in Africa are showing no hint of the poliovirus. So everything is really looking good. But the protocols are that you have to go a year without a polio case in order to have a country declared endemic. You need to have 3 years of no polio cases and good surveillance to be sure that before you declare it's certified as polio free. And everyone celebrating India a year ago was certified free. I think what people tended to forget, that was actually 3 years from the last case. It was the year that it came off the endemic list, and then the 2 additional certified. So, even though we might be able to jump up and down pretty quick and celebrate what's going on in Africa, as Hamid Jaffrey, who replaced Bruce Aylward as the head of the polio effort for WHO, World Health Organization, said, it's fragile. It's very fragile. We've all heard the expression, it's just a plane ride away, and that's never so true. So my point in making that is, not to get you discouraged, because we are closer to the eradication of polio than we have ever been before. To think that we're down to just 3 endemic countries, to think that we're in 3 to 4 months without having a single country in Africa having endemic polio. This is all because people in 30,000, roughly clubs, 20-something thousand back then, 30 years ago, decided to take this on. World Health Organization wasn't much interested in working with a group of well-intentioned volunteers. There's a history book on polio that says that. Ron was involved back at some of those points. He headed up in his area some of the original fundraising. And you know what? They thought they could do it for $120 million. They raised $247 million, $248 million at that time. And now the cost is estimated at $5.5 billion. That's over a 5-year period. I was on a telephone conference call earlier today, and it was with the polio heads of UNICEF, the Gates Foundation, World Health Organization, the Centers for Disease Control, and myself representing you and the Rotarians of the world. And there was nothing but optimism, but they kept reminding us of the importance of surveillance. And again, this was in the early morning hours, and I was up actually, I was listening in and participating in this call actually in bed. And Hamid Jaffrey we was talking about surveillance, again, that email reminds me. And he was talking about that one of the issues is this inadequate stool adequacy. And I'm thinking, well, he's really talking the type of stools we don't want to think about after lunch. And then he says, again, this was the early morning, but we did so much better once we had the surge. Sometimes you get into odd language when you're talking about polio advocacy and polio eradication, but that's what it is. That's how it's spread. It's spread by stools. It's spread by inadequate sanitary conditions. That's why water projects are so important that you do, and all the different projects. But we are close. We are going to get it done. I'm confident, and we won't declare victory in Africa, but we're getting there. And, you know, I see they're taping this, and I got to be careful what I say, but I think we're just about there, and we're there. So what's going on in Pakistan? You know, I mentioned earlier, you know, some of the challenges with security that we have there. But the good news is because of your donations, your support, last month there were 36 million children who were immunized against polio in Pakistan. There were areas, thank you. 36 million children. That hadn't been happening in the last couple of years. There were areas of Pakistan, particularly areas called North and South Waziristan, they wouldn't let polio workers in. They wouldn't let those immunized. So then the government of Pakistan went in there and tried to break up the not so nice people there. And what happened? They spread out all over the country. They brought polio with them, and we had this big outbreak of polio all across Pakistan. As was mentioned, you know, this year there's only been about 22 cases. 22 in Pakistan, 1 case in Afghanistan. It was because of that spread. The good news is that as they were heading out of North and South Waziristan, Rotarians were at transit points that they had set up, and they were immunizing the children as the people were escaping. As people were going back to North and South Waziristan, they were making sure those kids were immunized. You know, and we hear, you know, Pakistan, it's maybe not the most easy country to work with. You know, there is some corruption there. There is everywhere. But you know what? We also hear that, you know, maybe there's certain religious faiths that aren't encouraging their kids to get immunized. You know, but we look at what's the refusal rate in Pakistan? 2%. When parents are offered to have their kids immunized, despite the danger that someone might come by on a motorcycle with a gun, 98% of them saying yes. That's more than a saying yes in the state of California. More than a saying yes. So when you hear criticism of Pakistan, and when you lose a little bit of confidence, you know what? Pakistan is doing their job. They're going to get it done. So, you know, I'm pretty confident, as others have said, that there is no technical reason why we cannot have the last polio case this calendar year. Technical reason. There are political reasons that might not happen. When I say political, I mean, you know, systems in different places. But mentioned earlier, why I got this email from Governor-elect Sajid Pervez, one of your classmates, and he said, you know, come and install the offices. In about 2 months, a little less than 2 months from today, I'm going to be in Lahore, Pakistan, representing all of you. And my assignment is to install the club offices, the district offices, in what will likely be, during their year in office, when the world sees the last polio case. And you know, all of us in this district, Ron's district, we've seen the last polio cases, we hope, certainly, in our districts. But this is the epicenter. This is where the 60-year dream that Jonas Salk had and all those people that gave to the March of Dimes, this is the dream of 30 years ago of Rotarians. It all comes back to a bunch of Rotarians who are in a room very similar to this in Lahore, Pakistan, who are going to get it done. But they need our help. The Gates Foundation is still matching. For every $1 we give, they're matching $2. For every $35 million the Rotarians spend on the eradication of polio, the Gates Foundation is then giving us $70 million. You know, it's going to take time. You know, just because we haven't had cases in a while, they may be lurking out there. We don't have the most perfect surveillance. But you know what? We got a lot to be pleased about. You know, I don't do the fingers this close because I don't want to be jinxed. But you know what? It is getting closer. It's getting closer because districts like this, governors like Stella, governors like Jim, who say polio's a priority in this district, we're going to get it done. So it'll just be, maybe this Rotary year, certainly hope so, that Rotary can celebrate the last country that's endemic. We can look forward to 2 years later, certification. And you know what? We've spent 30 years lighting up Rotary. We've spent 30 years giving smiles to mothers and children around the world. And next Rotary year, Rotarians will truly be a gift to the world because we had the persistence. We're willing to stick with it for 30 years. We're willing to bring other partners with us. We're willing to willingly accept monies from the Gates Foundation. We were advocating to governments, and we were willing to get it done. The day is almost here. It will be here with your help. So on behalf of the other 34,000 odd clubs, I thank you very passionately for all of your leadership, for all of what you have done in this district, in your country, because your Canada has been so supportive. Bob Scott, a great hero, headed polio so long. Bruce Aylward, who is from Newfoundland, you all know, who moved to now conquering Ebola. You know, this region, this district, this country has so much to be proud of. So thank you, congratulations, and let's truly end polio now. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Just in closing, I wanted to give a little plug. Anyone can get this book. This is a history book of how Rotary started the eradication of polio. We are now writing the history of what's gone on for the last 30 years, and then a book's going to be written of how it was done. And I would like to present this book to Stella, to thank her for all of her leadership and indirectly all the leadership you are providing to the eradication of polio, because you are truly writing the next volume of this book as we eradicate polio. So thank you, Stella. Thank you.
So I was standing in the breakfast lineup with Mike this morning, and he tells me that early morning meeting went from 2 and he finished at 5 a.m. And speaking of intelligence, I think he sounded pretty good in spite of all of that. So, Mike, thank you so much for sharing the polio story. And soon with the perseverance, we can go from the 600,000 cases per year that we had so many years ago to 0. And that will be certainly something to celebrate. Mike, I get emails from some guy named Michael McGovern in my inbox, and I'm pleased to now know you as Mike.
Well, thank you. Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And this is for you. You have a book.
Thank you.
Now, if I may. Oh, did I miss something, Stella? Yes. Sorry, if this is Bruce Templeton's book, that'll be near and dear to Mike's heart to have a look at some of the anecdotes that are in that book. And thank you so much, Bruce, for writing it. Before I go, the Heartland Ride, the website is open for you to register. The ride in Truro is July the 5th. Go and register, get your polio jerseys. These are awareness rides. We hope that we'll maybe use ideas.rotary to do a Fund My Ride kind of thing for this year. And maybe with some luck, if we can get some momentum going, we'll plan a big ride for the following year. I ride with Jim a little bit, and I asked him one time before we went, are there any dogs on your routes? And he says, no, there are no dogs on these back roads. Well, except for one. So we're on our way to Masstown, and there's this big dog coming at us. And I wasn't out running the dog, and Jim was a little bit ahead of me, so I stopped. And I looked around, and Jim was nowhere to be seen. So we got home, explained the story to Barb, and Jim said, well, he said, you were stopped. I was home free. He says, and by the way, that was the one dog. Thank you very much.